Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Pararajagacharya Stotra Sadri Shrimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Or Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nasta Prayasta Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading today in the third canto, the status quo, chapter 14, entitled Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening, text number 21. Navayam prabhavastam tvam anukartum graheshvari apyayushavakartsnena ye chanye guna gridnavaha navayam prabhavastam tvam anukartum graheshvari apyashushavakarsnena ye chanye guna gridnava navayam prabhavastam tvam anukartum graheshvari apyayushavakartsnena ye chanye guna gridnava. Please chant. Ayam pravastam tvam anukartum graheshvari Na, never, Vayam, we, Prabhavaha, are able, tam that, tvam unto you, anukartum do the same, griha ishvari, O Queen of the home, api, in spite of, ayusha, by duration of life, va, or in the next life, kartsnyena, entire, ye, who, cha, also, anye, others, guna gridnava, those who are able to appreciate qualities. O Queen of the home, we are not able to act like you, nor could we repay you for what you have done, even if we worked for our entire life or even after death. To repay you is not possible, even for those who are admirers of personal qualities. Purport. So much glorification of a woman by her husband indicates that he is henpecked or is talking lightly in joke. Kasyapa meant that householders living with wives enjoy the heavenly blessings of sense enjoyment and at the same time have no fear of going down to hell. The man in the renounced order of life has no wife and may be driven by sex desire to seek another woman or another's wife and thus go to hell. In other words, the so-called man of the renounced order who has left his house and wife goes to hell if he again desires sexual pleasure knowingly or unknowingly. In that way, the householders are on the side of safety. Therefore, husbands as a class cannot repay their debt to women either in this life or in the next. Even if they engage themselves in repaying the women throughout their whole lives, it is still not possible. Not all husbands are as able to appreciate the good qualities of their wives, but even though one is able to appreciate these qualities, it is still not possible to repay the debt to the wife. Such extraordinary praises by a husband for his wife are certainly in the mood of joking. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shabanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam bhangum mangayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. O Queen of the home, we are not able to act like you, nor could we repay you for what you have done. Even if we worked for our entire life or even after death, to repay you is not possible, even for those who are admirers of personal qualities. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Bhagavatam class. And today we're still on this chapter on Kasyapa. Somehow I've been giving class like almost every week or every day, it feels like. And it's a little bit of it seems like more grihasta topics. But anyways, if you're second initiated, you'll learn the prayer where Lord Chaitanya says, I'm not a Shudra, I'm not a Vaishya, I'm not a, I'm not a Kshatriya, I'm not a Brahmin, I'm not a Brahmachari, I'm not a Grihastha, I'm not a Vanaprastha, I'm not a Sannyasi, I'm just a servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, who is the maintainer of the gopis. So in that mood, we can talk about the Bhagavatam. Where we are right now is, I'm sure we all realize Kasyapa is about to impregnate Diti with some heavy demoniac beings, Hiranya and Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Because even though he knows the science of Garbhadam, of how to properly place a child in the womb to get good offspring, as he's an expert progenitor, and he's probably all of our great-great-grandfather in some ways, if you trace the lineage back. Still, due to different circumstances, one being simply the will of the Lord, at least in this story in Bhagavatam, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu are born every kalpa, or day of Brahma, but in this specific kalpa, there are special souls, as Shukadev Goswami reveals later in the Bhagavatam. They're actually Jai and Vijay, who, I was just reading Lagu Bhagavatamrita, they were guards in Vaikuntha, and they heard some of the Kirtaniyas in Vaikuntha sing about how Lord Narayan likes to kill the demons, and how epic it was. So they were thinking, wow, this is so epic, we have to see this, we have to like experience this. And so with that desire, and Lord Narayan agreeing with that desire, he caused the Chatusans, the 4 Kumaras, they're all called Chatusan because what are their names? Do you know their names, Jimmy? Yeah. Sanandan, yeah. So they're all called the 4 sons, S-A-N, because they all have sun in their name. Sanandan, Sanat, like that, Sanak. So they're called the four sons, and it was arranged that they would curse Jai and Vijay, and they gave him a choice. Do you want to live 10 lifetimes in the material world? Probably as devotees or as whatever, or do you want to live 3 with intense hatred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead? And they said 3. So their first birth was as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So this whole situation can be seen as just time unfolding to reveal Krishna's pastimes, to reveal Narayan's pastimes, Vrahadev's pastimes, and his pastimes with his devotees. Although, actually, it's not every kalpa that it's Jai and Vijay that become Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. But in our Bhagavatam, that's what it is. So that's one way we can see this. But if we zoom in on actually just what's happening, Kasyapa is getting his lower nature taking advantage of him. He's trying to, right now, we'll hear him try to give good advice. He's trying to pacify his wife in this very sweet, joking language. And then he is, it says his wife due to being, like he's saying, just wait a moment, it's not the right time. We have to wait until it's a more auspicious time. He said, just 1 second. Kind of someone says, oh, just 1 minute, I'll be there, just now coming. So anyway, so he says 1 second, but they have to wait for the inauspicious time of the Sandhya, or in the midnight time, when Lord Shiva and all his different yakshas and ghosts and bhutas and pretas and all these different things are active, because then they would contaminate the samskara, and of course, we all know what happened. So Kasyapa is saying he's unable to pay the debt. That reminds me of 2 different things. One thing is that we're all unable to pay our debts to the forefathers, to our gurus, to our parents, to the demigods, to Mother Earth, to so many different entities. And so it's said that one must live a life of sacrifice, of yajna, of giving to those, at least in token, to be able to pay these debts off. We can't possibly go to everyone and completely repay the debts, but by following the sacrificial culture, Vedic culture, we can do that. And specifically now in Kali Yuga, we simply offer everything that we can to Krishna. And also unpaying the debts remind me of another thing where Krishna, does anyone remember you've read the Krishna book? Krishna says, I'm unable to repay your debt. Who is he talking to? He says, I'm unable to repay the debt. Yeah, he's talking to the gopis. So Krishna is saying this. He's unable to pay the debt of the fully surrendered devotees. The gopis. That's what they're not. They're not women. That just happens to be the form of their body. Their consciousness is they're fully surrendered to Krishna. So why can't Krishna pay them? I mean, he's God. He can do everything. Oh, can you get the...
Because they're part and parcel spirit souls, they're able to give everything to Krishna because they're not unlimited like Krishna is. But because Krishna and his potencies and his glories are always ever increasing, he's unable to give himself completely and totally because there's the complete and total of himself, like his total existence is always ever increasing. So he can give himself completely and totally to them, but then next moment it'll increase. So he'll be like, oh, I just gave like a part of myself. I actually can't repay you, because you can't fully reciprocate with them.
Well, because they're also able to fully grow with him, because as they appreciate him, their qualities also grow and they increase in beauty. Okay. So wrong answer. Anyone else? That's a good try though, Jimmy. That's very logical and makes sense, but it wasn't exactly what the acharyas are getting at. Do you understand the question, Jayananda? Do you have a guess?
Because the love, they are giving so much to him, like he can't.
What are they giving that he can't give? That's the question. Because they're giving so much, he could make himself into unlimited forms and dress nice. Like it's specifically said, they're dressing so nicely, just thinking about him. They're doing everything for his pleasure. So why can't he do that?
It's like a death. If you're giving something to the other person, feeling like, okay, I must also do something to.
But there's something that he's God, specifically because he's God, that he can't repay them. And that's the unique asset that the gopis have that no one else has. Do you understand? Does anyone have a guess? Okay, so it bhakti, but we have to be clear, specific, is completely ananya, fixed, one-pointed bhakti. The gopis are so fixed that we hear, like, what do we hear that? What do they do when Krishna plays his flute to call them? You remember something? Tell me one thing with the mic.
Yeah, asking what the gopis do when they hear Krishna's flute.
Krishna plays the flute. The gopis are doing so many different things. This is in the Krishna book. If you've read the Krishna book,
they drop everything and just.
Yeah, but what's one thing that they drop?
Their families. Like
give me specific examples.
I don't know any specific. Oh, like Radharani leaving her so-called husbands just to go.
But that's not in the Krishna book.
No. Okay.
Something you've specifically read. Okay, I'll help you. Chaitanya, give it to Chaitanya. He'll help you.
Yeah, I don't know any specific.
You should read the Krishna book over and over.
They're getting dressed and they hear Krishna's flute and they put the shirt.
Yeah, exactly. They put the shirt on the pants and the pants on the top. Or I don't really know exactly what they're dressing as, but something like that. Maybe they put their choli on the bottom, and who knows. And another one, like they're breastfeeding their baby. They just leave their baby. They're boiling milk. They just leave the milk. They're literally serving out their husbands and their family, and they just like drop it and run away. They're putting on makeup and they accidentally just smudge it all over the place, and they don't even care, and they just run. So Krishna says, I want to get to that. He's like, you worship me, cutting off all domestic ties, which are difficult to break. Which means they've really embodied the verse, Sarva Dharma Prityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Moksha. What is it? Tamaham. Someone help me out. Everyone should know the shloka. Aham Tvam Sarva Papio Mokshashami Masujaha. So Sarva Dharma Prityaja, that you surrender all varieties of religion. So the most fully surrendered devotees, they're giving up Patni Dharma, Stri Dharma, Varnashram Dharma. There's all these different things which are normally thought of as complete. But because of their complete, one-focused bhakti just towards trying to give pleasure to Krishna, that all of these things, even though normally in normal circumstances these are the Lord does appreciate when we follow these. In their situation, they're willing to give them all up, and this is also illustrated and highlighted in the famous story where Krishna is sick. He pretends to be sick, and he has dust on his. He asks, "How can I get?" They ask him, "How can you get relieved?" He says, "I think if I get the dust of the pure devotee on my head, then that'll be the proper medicine." Everyone's heard the story. You've heard that story. You've heard that story. Jayananda, you heard that story? Okay, well, we'll briefly recount it. So, Narmuni goes to all the devotees. He goes to the queens of Dwarka, and they say no, because we follow Patni Dharma. If the wife puts the dust of her feet in a proud way and puts it on the husband, then she'll have to go to hell for that. And we don't want to be separated from Krishna. So we don't want to go to hell. Whereas then, the Brajabasis who have this Ananya Bhakti, their attitude is completely different. Like Mother Yashoda, there's some statement about Mother Yashoda that she's willing to die thousands of times, even if it just means to prevent a drop of sweat coming from Krishna's forehead. They're so one-pointedly focused on Krishna that they don't and so when Narada Muni asks the gopis, they're fighting over whose dust that they're going to get, and then he's like, whoa, wait a second, don't you understand? If you do this, you'll go to hell, and then all of them basically reply in unison. They understand the situation. They're not ignorant, and then they say, yes, we're willing, even if it's just to relieve Krishna for 5 minutes, we're willing to go to hell for eternity. That's their complete focus on Krishna. So when Krishna says, Ye tam mam prapajante tam sataiva bhajamiham, as everyone surrenders unto me, I reward them accordingly. This is kind of his promise in Bhagavad Gita. And he's saying that this is how he works with everyone. So for the atheist, they're saying that by their actions and deeds and mentality, they're saying, God, I want you to not be there. They're basically praying like that. That's their consciousness. So Krishna actually, for the sincere atheist, he gives them the intelligence by which they can forget him completely, and the consciousness by which they can just live their life whatever ways they live. Then for different people with different desires, he reciprocates with them, and according to their surrender, he rewards them. So if someone performs some service for him and they want something, he gives it to them. So now we get to the question, how is he unable to repay the debts of the gopis? So the gopis, they're the ones that their consciousness is that they're so just one-pointed focused on Krishna, they can't forget Krishna even if they want to. Krishna's topmost instruction in the Bhagavad Gita is Man mana bhava mad bhakto mam yaji mam namaskuru. And so he's saying, always think of me, become my devotee, offer your obeisance up to me, and this way you'll come to me. He's telling that to Arjuna. And this is it's one of the most important instructions in the forget which school of thought it was. In one of the 6 schools of thought, they have a way of analyzing a literature to find out what is the main topic of the literature. And the way that you find the main topic of literature, one way is, what is the point that's repeated throughout? What is the thing that's stated in the beginning, middle, and end? And there's so those, if you know those 2 things, then you can know something that's like the literature is definitely talking about that. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that directly in the middle and directly at the end. It's like the same, like at least the first 2 padas of the shloka are exactly the same. And so he's saying that you should focus your mind on me. So we find that actually the gopis have trouble to even forget Krishna. Even if they want to forget him, they can't. And he's just burned into their mind with complete, like they can't think about anything else. So this single-minded absorption is, at least this is what I read in Shivaram Maharaj's book, which is just a compilation of everything he's heard on these topics. It's called Na Parayeham. It's all about the shloka. And so this single-minded absorption is the thing that Krishna, he can't match, because he's Bhagavan. He has to reciprocate with everybody. So he's absorbed in somewhat, as someone is absorbed in him, he is absorbed in them to a degree. But he can't be single-mindedly absorbed in one person. If he does, then it would be a bad deal for everyone else. And so that's the answer. Does that make sense? And you understand? So that was about the debts, because Yapa is saying, even if we worked our entire life, we could not repay you for what you have done. Which, I'm not sure, Prabhupada just saying in general, husbands are indebted to their wives because they allow them to live a life that they can actually make spiritual advancement, whereas otherwise they'll go to hell. So this is one thing, like it's said in Kali Yuga, in one Purana, it said that there's 5 forbidden things, and one of them is to become a sannyasi. However, we see so many people becoming sannyasis, like Shankaracharya and almost all of his big followers, Madhavacharya, Ramanujacharya, even Lord Chaitanya, he took initiation from a sannyasi. He became a sannyasi himself. So how can we reconcile this? And actually even Mahaprabhu quoted this verse, but it was when he was talking to the Chandkazi, and he wasn't really referring to sannyas. He was referring to, because he wasn't a sannyasi at that time, but later he would take sannyas. So he's not contradicting himself. He was actually just talking about, it's also, there's another, the 5 things that you can't do in Kali, which is to make a cow for sacrifice. Because Chandkazi was trying to make some argument that, you're saying we don't eat meat, but you guys do sacrifices with cows, and blah, 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 like stupid argument. And so Lord Chaitanya shut that down. So in Kali Yuga it said that one should not take sannyas, but look, we have worshipful sannyasi right here. Maharaj is here, very nice. And so actually the point is there's different kinds of sannyas, and one is karma sannyas, which literally, and Krishna talks about this in the 3rd and 5th chapters of Gita, about just you renounce everything. And we have an example in the Bhagavatam of the Python sannyasi, who's just he's a karma sannyasi, and it's not possible in this age. For one reason is that in general the body can't go much longer than a day without food. If you're in a situation where you're not getting, obviously the body can go for some time without actually dying, but then if you're in a situation where you're just guaranteed that you're not getting food, then it's not a way to be able to live your life. Whereas in other yugas, we hear amazing things, like in the Bhagavatam, Dhruva, he just started subsisting on air, and then it said, no, he only had to breathe once every like 18 days or whatever it was. It became less and less and less, and even his breathing was less until he just stopped breathing, and his mystic trance with Super Soul created a whole havoc for everyone else. And there's also a statement that's saying in Sati Yuga, as long as your bones are there, your life can be there. So we have examples of this in the Bhagavatam. Hiranyakashipu, yeah, he's one example. And then also I've heard Valmiki, of the speaker of the Ramayana, he was engaging in austerity, and it came to the point where, similar to Hiranyakashipu, where bugs ate his whole body and turned it into dirt. But because his bones were still there, he was still able to do his tapasya. And then by some miracle similar to Hiranyakashipu, he regained his body. So that's karma sannyas, giving up everything, not even eating, just not doing anything, just accepting whatever's coming. And that's impossible. But then, like I said, sarva dharma pratyadyam mama ekam sarahanam vraja ham tam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami masuchaha. Krishna's saying, he's giving, this is the shloka in Bhagavad Gita for the real sannyasi. And Mahaprabhu also says this, that then there's Tridandi sannyasi, the three dandas, or the three sticks, that they represent surrendering. So what do we surrender? Our mind, our body, and our words to the service of Krishna. So we always think about Krishna, remembering what we've heard, remembering instructions of the spiritual master. In the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says thinking means planning. So we're also planning how to make different festivals for Krishna. Then, after we plan the festival, like we're trying to plan for Janmashtami, we're trying to make these big banners in the front, and they're having like all kinds of like, okay, how are we going to hang it from the window, or we're going to have to hang it from the arch, or it's like, it's too dangerous, or when you get it like 5 feet wide or 4 feet wide, and it's like so much like thinking and planning on just one of the probably hundreds of things that we can do for making a nice festival. So then we actually doing that is working, is using your body. So that's another danda, using your body to actually perform whatever you've been planning. And then of course using our words, always chanting and always speaking about Krishna. Like Mahaprabhu says, Kirtaniya Sadahari. And so by following that, Prabhupada says that actually everyone needs to be a Tridandi sannyasi. That's what Krishna is asking in the Bhagavad Gita. That's what Lord Chaitanya is asking in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And that's what every bona fide guru asks, everyone to surrender to Krishna, Sharanagati, accept everything that's favorable and reject everything that's unfavorable. And that way, there'll be a sannyasi. And then, of course, we also want to follow Varnashram Dharma, and the sannyas is there. So it's not like Varnashram Dharma is, it's much less followed in Kali Yuga, but there's still Varnashram Dharma, going to the level of sannyasi. And so, like this is what was meant. You shouldn't take karma sannyas, but Tridandi sannyas actually is meant for everyone. And then the symbols are meant for those, who eventually reach that stage. If the men get to a certain age, go through either sometimes one will stay brahmachari and then directly take sannyas, or go for brahmachari, grihasta, vanaprastha sannyas. And the last point I wanted to talk about was Prabhupada saying how, on the other hand, the householders, they have the wife to be able to maintain their happy living and sense gratification. But if a renounced person wants this sense gratification, then is no good, as Bipin would say. And so it reminds me of a purport, and Prabhupada's talking about in the 8th canto, where Gajendra, who was previously King Indradyumna, is that right? Gajendra was I think he was, and so he was sporting in the water, and then suddenly a crocodile comes and attacks him, and Prabhupada's telling us, and what was happening, it was described that they were fighting for thousands of years. So this is some epic, like, not normal crocodile, not normal elephant. But because the crocodile was in his element, he was in the water, he was able to continuously gain strength and slowly, be able to defeat the element. Where the elephant, his element is on land, so he was slowly losing his strength. Prabhupada says, now from this we may take the lesson that in our fight with Maya, this is in the 3rd chapter of the 8th canto, if you want to look at that section. In our fight with Maya, our Krishna consciousness movement has actually declared war against Maya. So we should not be in a position in which our strength, enthusiasm, and senses will be unable to fight vigorously. So the soldiers in this Krishna consciousness movement must always possess physical strength, enthusiasm, and sensual power. To keep themselves fit, they must therefore place themselves in a normal condition of life. What constitutes a normal condition will not be the same for everyone, and therefore there are divisions: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanapras, Sennyas. So he was, making a point. One of his sannyasis who later became Grahastha. Well, this was in the 3rd chapter of the 8th canto. But now I'm just speaking, I'm not reading. One of his disciples, he wrote this specific purport in some sections, thinking about a specific disciple of his, and who was having trouble in the renounced order. And then he asked him to get married. And in a room conversation about that, actually this is in Leela Amrita, he says, someone was asking Prabhupada, what happens if one of the sannyasis, what if they become a vatashi, an eater of their own vomit, one that later then accepts the wife, and don't they go to hell? Isn't that going to be bad? And then Prabhupada says, if the spiritual master gives the facility and makes that arrangement, then Krishna will accept, and later they again can become sannyas. And then Satsarup Maharaj is mentioning, it had happened before, and Prabhupada mentioned a few cases where he had asked fallen sannyasis to get married and stay in their service. Prabhupada says, of course, it is a shameful position, but what can be done? My godbrothers and sannyasis in India criticized me for giving Brahman and sannyas initiation and installing deities in the West and allowing women to stay in the temples. But for all that, I'm expanding Krishna consciousness, and for all their strictness, they're doing nothing. If I discriminate like them, then I will become alone again, as I was in Vrindavan, and again become a mouse. So Prabhupada was on a mission. He was following the order of his spiritual master, and he was giving the task, when someone in a high government position or a high managerial position, they don't really have so much oversight. They're given leeway to be able to get the needful done because they know the goal of the organization and they know what's to be done. So Prabhupada was given that by his spiritual master, go and spread things in the West. And he did it, and because to be able to do that, he needed to make some adjustments. And he also needed generals to run his army. So he gave so many people sannyas to give them more authority, give them more, even the reason why Lord Chaitanya took sannyas was so he would have more authority, more respect. And so he knew that not all of them would make it. These are 20-year-old men, and especially born in the West with different samskars. There's different Madhavacharya sannyasis that from the age of 8 they took sannyas, but they knew the entire life they would be sannyasis because they had good samskars. They had, they could look at the astrology and in a proper Indian culture, and therefore they could make it. But then Prabhupada's saying, if I didn't do this, then I would not be able to do very much. So this is Prabhupada's glory, and he's showing us that, if there's some way to actually make an adjustment to increase the preaching, then as long as the spiritual master is accepting it, then it'll be accepted by Krishna. And this point about being the crocodile versus the elephant, there's two things that come to mind in that. One is the obvious one, that we should always try to be in our correct position to be able to maximize our spiritual life, maximize our surrender to Krishna. And for that, it's different for everybody, and then therefore there should be proper counseling, proper guidance by superiors, and should be supported. So when it says the fighting went on for thousands of years, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about how Maya can attack us, and it's usually never a direct attack. Maya always does a sneak attacks. She imperceptibly changes the situation until we just get too degraded, and then she doesn't even have to attack. Then the business is already finished. I was looking for exact where the quote was, but I couldn't find it. But I've heard that spiritual life is like the waning and the waxing of the moon. Like if you keep doing your sadhana and you do it good day by day, like everyone will notice if they wake up nicely every single day, they chant their japa nicely every day, they take only prasadam every day, they read Prabhupada's books every day, they do some good service, go on Harinam or do something, and they're consistent every single day, their spiritual strength will wane like the moon. Like the moon, you can't tell one night it's just like this, the next night it doesn't look that much different, but gradually over 28 days, 14 days, over 14 days, it gradually gets bigger and bigger. So that's the waxing of the moon. And then finally you can see it's the full moon. It was just a sliver, and then it became a completely full moon. And so it's not something you're going to notice very instantaneously, but those who have been practicing over weeks and months and years, they definitely notice a difference. And that's, no one will say differently. And on the other hand, it's said if a brahmachari doesn't properly read the this is what I read. If a brahmachari probably doesn't read the shastras and study every day, then his spiritual potency will diminish, just like the waning of the moon. And that's similar. If we stop going to the morning program, if our japa starts getting worse and worse and worse, inattentive and spaced out, not done in one time, and so on and so forth, then we can understand that our spiritual potency, and we can feel it, will slowly diminish. And there's a story in this regard that Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he was giving one class. I heard a class of his, and he gives very amazing classes. If anyone wants to search on YouTube for, I don't think there's that many on there, but they're all very powerful. Definitely recommended. So he was telling about this devotee he knew that was super strict with going to the morning program, and he was just completely fixed. For years he was doing it, and then something push came to shove, and this is at a time when everyone lived at the temple, and it was mostly considered Maya if you moved out of the temple. But somehow he had to move out of the temple, and so then after 1 year, Bhakti Tirtha Swami runs into him again, and he's still doing the morning program every single day, completely strictly, even like doing a Bhagavatam class and everything. And then a year later, he's like, "Yeah, Prabhu, I'm still waking up and chanting my rounds, but it's like not a full morning program." And then he ran into him like even later than that, and the guy had completely melted, and he was admitting, "Yeah, I didn't have any good association, and now I'm not doing anything." And so this is how Maya works. It works, gradually. If we get ourselves into a good situation, then we can gradually gain strength. But then we have to also realize that at any moment we can kind of lose that good association, or we can stop focusing, and then slowly, like the waning of the moon, it'll be a full moon. We may feel very powerful, and then slowly it becomes nothing. Like Prabhupada said, again, become a mouse. So there's 5 minutes left, and there's one more thing this reminded me of, where Prabhupada's saying that he's joking with her, and I'll just say it. I won't go through so much talking about it. But Krishna says in chapter 60 of the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, that he's like trying to joke with Rukmini, and then she doesn't really understand, and she starts to freak out. So then he's pacifying her, and he's explaining, the greatest pleasure worldly householders can enjoy is to spend time joking with their beloved wives. So this is something that Kasyapa is doing with his wife, and Krishna tried to do with Rukmini, and Rukmini didn't get it at first, and so she was crying, and he pacified her, and then she got it, and then she came back with like not retaliation. I forget the word. Super expert rebuttal. Yeah, that's a good word. So, Maharaj, do you have any comments or criticisms?
Karma Sannyas?
Karma Sennyas, there's an article written by Gaudiya Math, and then there's also a CC purport. Yeah. The Sridhar Maharaj, he wrote in this, they were quoting this in the article in a book called something Staircase, and he was talking about specifically karma sannyas, because there's a question that would come up to, I mean, it's a question for everyone, for Shankarites, for Madhavacharya, for Ramanujacharya, for ISKCON devotees. Like, if someone says, "Oh, the prana says this, you can't have sannyas in Kali Yuga." Well, there's so many sannyasis, so what's the answer? And so that's where he was quoting from, and that's what they're saying to answer that question. Give Noah the mic.
Okay, I'll be quick. Sorry if this, I'm still new and stuff. So sannyasi, that's when you're fully detached, right? Fully renounced from everything, family, and all that too.
It means you leave your family for the service of the Lord. Specifically, like I was saying, tree dandi means 3 sticks. Like you'll see a sannyasi, they'll sometimes have the stick. Let's call it danda or tree danda. And there's like 3 bamboo rods in there that are like wrapped with cloth. And sometimes it has also a moon like thing wrapped on it, which the 3 rods represent mind, body, and words, like surrendered to Krishna. And then the other thing on it represents the soul. So the soul is like surrendered to Krishna.
So you said at like 8 years old?
Yeah, there's called the Madhava sect, which I mean we're technically a part of. In India, they have, actually I think he recently left his body, but he was initiated at sannyas at age 8.
Wow.
I mean, they can, with the proper astrologer, they can tell these things. Like Prabhupada at his time of birth, they said, you're going to be extremely rich and have 108 or something like that temples. Like they knew he was going to open up temples. He's just a little baby. How are they supposed to tell? But they have the science. If no one knows the science, they can see. So similarly, these sannyasis, like they can tell when they're born what the situation are, the omens and everything, and okay, he's going to be a great sannyasi, and then they're very successful. You don't hear like, oh, this person fell down, that person fell down from there, because of how they're in line with the proper culture and the proper science. Chaitanya.
We met one in Columbus who took sannyas at 12.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like he was struggling. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. Srila Prabhupada ki.